Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the Hot Corner, and we are glad to be back. We are LTV's all baseball themed show here, and a lot has happened over the summer. We missed a lot with the season, but we are glad to be back and get underway. I'm your host, Brandon Magown. I'm joined here today by Harrison Duhr. Harrison, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brent. Always a pleasure.
All right,
always a pleasure.
Yeah, like I said, a lot has happened, so let's get right into it. Our first topic is going to be talking about the division race out west. With the Angels seemingly having that AL West wrapped up, was it still a good move for the Athletics to trade Cespedes for Jon Lester?
Initially I liked the move a lot. The A's, they already got Jeff Samardzija at the time, and to add Jon Lester to an already dominant rotation, you had to love the move.
And they already had Sonny Gray.
Scott Kazmir's had a great all-star season. But even though Lester's been very effective for them, he's been 5-3, 2.3 ERA, and 9 starts for the A's at this point. Their offense has really struggled without Yoenis Cespedes. Brandon Moss, one of their better hitters, in the lineup. When Cespedes was actually in the lineup, he had zero home runs, a 169 batting average in August, and only 2 home runs and a 179 batting average in September this far. So really, he's been struggling. Stephen Voigt, another guy, he hit about 360 between June and July, only 212 in August.
Yeah, just other guys not stepping up, like Josh Donaldson, just the whole line. I mean, you take out their number 4 hitter, and usually teams don't give up their big guy in the lineup, and they did. They shipped him out east, and they're missing his presence out there because he's not only great offensively, but he's great in the field defensively. He has a great arm. But I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I'm going to say I still like the move, just because. Really? Now that they're most likely not going to win that division out there, they're going to have to go to that one-game wild card, and I'm rooting for Mariners, the Seattle Mariners to win that game, and they're going to be throwing out Felix Hernandez. You have to stack up against that, and Jon Lester he's a veteran, he has experience, he already has some world championships under his belt. He's not going to go out there and be nervous. Sonny Gray, I think he would probably be the guy they would throw out there, and he's young. It's only his second full year. His first full year is only his second year in the big league, so I just don't know if he can handle that pressure. So you got a guy like Lester who can go out there and just be dominant. Like you said, he's got he's 5-3 so far. He got 2.3 ERA, 107 WHIP. He got 227 opponent's batting average, which is is really good. And he has 57 strikeouts in 62 2/3 innings pitched.
The problem is though, Lester's not under contract for next season, and Yoenis Cespedes is,
exactly.
And that is a huge gamble. Exactly. And honestly, if it doesn't pay off, it's really going to look bad coming up.
But I think as long as they win, as long as they get into that wild card game and they win that first game, they're back to square one. They're back to where they wanted to be in the ALDS. So I know I still like the move a lot, but like you said, if they lose.
And if they don't have offense in the playoffs, then they're not going to go very far at all.
But you know just as well as I do, the playoffs are all about pitching, and they have a great pitching staff. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it's a good move come October. But I agree. You seem to disagree. We'll have to wait and see.
It is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. That'll wrap up this first segment here. When we come back, we'll jump into our rapid fire segment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Hot Corner. It's now time for our rapid fire segment. We'll each ask each other 3 questions, and we'll have 30 seconds to respond. Harrison, we're going to start with you. With the AL Central race, coming down to the wire here, who do you think is going to win, the Royals or the Tigers?
I think it's going to be the Detroit Tigers. I mean, I still can't believe we're having this discussion this late in the season, but the Tigers have that veteran presence. The Royals haven't made the playoffs since the 80s. They really have faltered lately in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think the Tigers are going to be able to get there. They just have too many good players not to get there. And I think the Royals' time will be next year, but this is the time for the Detroit Tigers. Yeah,
really? But I think this is the Royals' year.
I don't think it is. No.
They're the longest professional playoff drought. This is it for them.
Well, I think it's going to be 1 more year for them. I think the Tigers have to get that ring this year. I think it'll be their year.
Yeah, the window's closed. I think the Tigers also do have the easier schedule towards the end, so we'll see. But all right, your turn.
So, Brennan, your first question is it smart for the Yankees to have Tanaka come back and pitch before the season is over?
No, it is not. It is not a good move. The Yankees, they should have shut him down, and he should have had surgery right away. As soon as they had that partial tear in that ligament in his elbow, they should have just said, go get the surgery, get healthy, come back next year. Maybe you'll miss April, but you'll come back for May. You have that full season. Now now they're going to rush him back. The Yankees are basically out of this playoff chase. They're 6 games back for the second wild card. Not enough time left, less than 2 weeks.
Divisions.
Exactly.
Baltimore's clinched,
Baltimore won the division last night. So
exactly.
there's no need to have Tanaka come back and risk long-term injury again. So. But all right, Harrison, your second question will be: the Brewers were in first place for almost all season long, and they, just kind of went through a stretch where they kind of fell off, and now are, fighting the way in. Do you think the Brewers will make the playoffs?
I do not think they're going to make the playoffs. I wasn't a believer of them back in April or May, and they exceeded my expectations. Still being in the playoff race to this point, but they're 4 games out of the division. They're a game and a half out of the wild card, and their rotation, which has been so good this season, it's been terrible in the month of September. Matt Garza has a 5.5 ERA in the month of September, Gallardo 7.36, and Kyle Loesch 5.91. That is not going to get the job done. If 3/5 of your rotation is constantly having poor starts every time out, then you're not going to go far at all. And I think the Cardinals and Pirates are much better teams than the Brewers at this point.
I mean, I have to agree, but they do have 6 games now against the Pirates and the Cardinals. If they hold their own destiny, they could win and get in. So
they are 7-10 against the Cardinals this season, though, so they really going to have to change that number if they're going to even have a chance.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. For your second question is Giancarlo Stanton, excuse me, is he still an MVP candidate even with him likely missing the rest of the season?
I would like to say yes, just because he's had such a fantastic year. I mean, look at his numbers right now. I mean, he still leads the NL in home runs with 37. He has 105 RBIs, one behind Adrian Gonzalez, who he probably would be ahead of him if he wasn't injured. He was what, 3rd, I think, in on-base percentage behind McCutchen. Probably still would be ahead of him. First in the league in walks. I mean, this guy does it all. He has power and he gets on base. And this Marlins team is such a young team. He's been the leader there. That's why McCutchen won it last year. Is because he had good numbers, but he also helped that team get there. I really think Stanton should still be considered for that MVP.
I don't think he's had a dominant season though. Personally, I think if anyone's having a dominant season, it's Clayton Kershaw. And I know the pitcher for MVP is a whole other debate, but he's truly the only one having a dominant season right now.
Yeah, we'll get in that debate later, maybe another show. But all right, your last question. Is Papelbon's suspension for his lewd gesture to the Philly crowd, when they were booing him after he blew that save the other day, is that 7-game suspension? Is that fair?
The Mets fan of me wants to say yes, but the realistic baseball fan of me says no. I mean, you got guys who throw at people's heads and they get suspended, 5 or 6 games, but Jonathan Papelbon may or may not have done his lewd gesture, gets a 7-game suspension. My only thought is maybe he accidentally bumped the umpire, and anytime you even remotely touch the umpire, whether it's incidental or not, you're going to get suspended. But I think, if anything, he should have been suspended 2 or 3 games, especially a closer too, who could be out there any day of the week. Exactly. I mean, that's a huge suspension.
I mean, Sammy Sosa years ago, they spent 8 games using a cork bat. Yeah. He cheated, and he got, right around the same amount of times as Papelbon. I think it's ridiculous.
I think we can both agree, though, Papelbon should have at least waited to go to the dugout to adjust that certain region. And
that's why I threw that question to you, because I'm a Phillies fan. I didn't want to be biased there, so
I appreciate that.
Let the Mets fan of you get that one.
Absolutely. And now for your final question, is the latest clarification of the blocking the plate rule enough, or do you think more should be done?
It's not even close to being enough. I mean, this clarification now was that you no longer have to be if the runner is dead out, if he's like 30 feet away, you don't have to give him a lane, which I think is good. And this is the second time this season that they made clarifications. A few months ago, they took away the if it's a forced play, you don't need to give him a lane, which obviously should have been from the start. But something needs to change. I actually hope that something big happens in the playoffs with this rule, just so that more attention be given to it, and they'll have to change something in the offseason.
Hopefully not an injury.
Exactly.
You're not home for Buster Posey.
Not an injury. I'm saying a controversial call, just because. Yeah. Just go back to the way it was. Just go back. Baseball was fine without this stupid rule.
Especially since your Phillies aren't going to be in it. You can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the playoffs.
Exactly. I don't care. Who it affects. But all right, that'll wrap up our rapid fire segment. When we come back, we're start a new segment called Coming At Ya. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Before we wrap things up here, we're gonna get a chance for a new segment called Coming At Ya, where we each kind of ask each other a question, made up on the spot. The other one doesn't know what we're gonna ask. Exactly. So we'll start with you, Harrison. Is there any chance Jose Altuve, who broke the Astros single-season hit record last night, has a chance of stealing that MVP away from Mike Trout?
I would love to see that, but we have to be honest here. It's Mike Trout's time. He's been snubbed the last 2 seasons. Obviously, the first time, Miguel Cabrera winning the Triple Crown, I mean, that's obviously a little bit more understandable, but I think you and I can both agree Mike Trout probably should have won it last year. But I think Trout has had the better season. He's got a .291 batting average, 39 doubles, 109 runs, 107 RBIs, 34 home runs, 14 stolen bases. I mean, he's having a great season. Yes, Altuve is going to win the batting title, but the MVP race is more about getting your team into the playoffs, or at least playoff contention. Yeah. And unfortunately, the Astros are not in playoff contention. That's why they developed the Hank Aaron Award. to give the to give it to the best hitter, even if you're not necessarily on the best team. But I think because Mike Trout has already clinched a playoff spot with the Angels, and because he's been snubbed the last 2 seasons, I think he has to get the MVP.
Yeah, I agree, and I would love to see Mike Trout finally get his MVP. So
Exactly.
I'm not too upset if Altuve doesn't get the award, but I think he deserves more attention than he's getting. He's barely getting any attention. But I mean, you said the numbers there. I was comparing them again last night. I mean, they're very similar until you go to the power.
Yeah.
And that's where Mike Trout, takes it. I mean,
and
Mike
RBIs
Trout,
too.
Exactly. I mean, he has more, runs batted in. He has well over 100 now, and he has the. Yeah,
Altuve's only at 54 RBIs.
Yeah, but Altuve has 50+ stolen bases. That's huge, but I guess not big enough to be able to overcompensate.
Yeah, I don't think stolen bases usually come into consideration for the MVP race. But another good example is Todd Helton in 2000. He I think had like a 375 batting average, 50 home runs, like 150 RBIs. The Rockies were terrible. He got 6th in the MVP voting. He led, I think, every category but RBIs, and yet he still didn't get it.
Having your team in the playoff race is definitely
it's a huge factor.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, now for your question, if the Detroit Tigers make the playoffs, do you put Justin Verlander in the bullpen?
That's a good question. I probably would, because he has not pitched that well all season, especially coming off the DL again. He hasn't pitched great. I don't have his numbers in front of me, obviously, but. He's not the Justin Verlander he used to be, which is understandable. He's been thrown a lot over these past few years. So, it worked out for Tim Lincecum a few years ago for the Giants. I say
against the Tigers, those very Tigers.
So I say you throw him in the bullpen at least for the ALDS. If you go to the ALCS, you make it there, and you need a 4th starter, bring him back out. See how he can do. I mean, he does thrive in the playoffs. We know that. I mean, especially last year, he struggled all year, and then he went in the playoffs and was dominant again. So I mean, we'll see. But I do agree that's probably a good point. You throw him in the bullpen because. It's about pitching in the playoffs, and if you're not getting good pitching, especially in a short series, your chances are very hindered.
Yeah, how can you not give the ball to Scherzer, Porcello, or Price over Verlander in a short series at this point? I think you have to. I mean, obviously it's going to be a hit to Verlander's ego, but I'm sure Justin Verlander can admit, if it's, I'm not pitching as well as I'm capable of pitching, I understand if they're getting the ball.
Yeah, and I think he'll be okay with that huge contract. I think, wherever
and Kate Upton is his girlfriend.
Exactly.
I think he's doing all right for himself.
I think wherever he's pitching, I think he'll be okay at the end of the day.
Exactly.
All right, well, that'll wrap up our first episode of the Hot Corner for the year. Thanks, Harrison, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Brennan. Always a pleasure.
Oh, no problem. Hope to get you back on soon. Well, we will be back on soon, but in the meantime, if you're interested in joining LTV, like us on Facebook or email us at ltv@tcnj.edu. For Harrison Duhr, I'm Brandon Magown. Have a good one.